Hi folks, welcome to the A Minute to Midnight show. This is Tony coming to you from New Zealand. With me on the show today I have John Haller, who I'm sure most of our listeners have no problem knowing who John is because I have him on the show so many times. Before I just get into introducing John, I just want to mention that A Minute to Midnight had another video taken down and banned from YouTube. And the censorship is so much on YouTube. I really want to encourage people, please subscribe to us at aminutemidnight.com and Rumble and BitChute, Apple Podcasts, whatever. Don't rely on YouTube because you're going to miss out a lot of what we post. So please realize that YouTube is censoring, and we're going to have to be very careful what we post on there from now on. So this video is going to be a video in two parts, a YouTube-friendly part, and then if you want to get into some really important other information, we'll put it on the other versions, the full versions. So welcome, John.
Good to be with you again, Tony.
Yes, and there's lots to talk about, and I'll just give it straight over to you, and you can kick us into the things that you've been mentioning earlier.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of strikes me each week as I prepare my prophecy update and thing is this convergence of events and how quickly they're happening. In fact, I've been talking about this for years. You know, when I first started doing little prophecy updates and stuff, I would have 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. Now it would be easy for me just to, do a little bit of a deep dive into a couple topics and talk about all the things going on. It would not be hard for me to do an hour a day. There's that much stuff going on that's related to the Bible prophecies. And we look at the things that are going to happen in the seal judgments and the trumpet judgments and that sort of thing. So I kind of have a grid that I use: acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. So for example, the logistics part, we know that there's the system coming by which people will have to have a mark to buy or sell. And, this has been something that in Bible prophecy circles we've talked about for decades, and everybody's ranged from it's a barcode to it's it's actually a chip in your hand. It's arrangement of DNA and that type of thing. And there's a company out there called Wallet More. I don't know if you've seen this, Wallet MOR, and they're putting chips in people. And it's interesting. They have on their website, they have a picture of an X-ray, and you can see the chip in the hand, which seems to meet some of the criteria. So that's again what the logistics part is. There's going to be a technology in place that's going to allow this to be done, and it appears it's going to be done on a global scale. So one of the things I think we should look for in Bible prophecy is are there things being done to put that in place? And so let me just go through a little bit. I know we're going to do a sort of a Rumble part of this, a Rumble only or non-YouTube part of this because of the problems we have. And at our church, at Fellowship Bible Chapel, we don't really talk about a couple of subjects just because that's going to get you banned in a heartbeat. And we do Bible teachings and that type of thing on our YouTube channel. So we want to protect that. But you're right that, if I don't do something on YouTube and I just do it on Rumble, it's going to be seen by, a quarter to a tenth of what I would normally views we would get on YouTube. And people are just sort of, YouTube's easy to use. It's the easiest to use for providers. It's got Google behind us. By the way, this morning I drove over. We'll talk about where I was going in the Rumble part of the show, but I drove over again today past the New Albany data center that's developed here in central Ohio. I drove past the 6 Facebook buildings, one of which is, they say, the largest artificial intelligence building on planet Earth. Each of the buildings is about two sides. They're all racks of servers. They're about, I don't know, I'm going to guess 5 to 6 stories tall, 1,200 feet long. They're about a quarter of a mile from one end to the other. There are 6 of them, and each building has 2 million square feet. So that would be 12 million square feet of racks of computers and servers to store our data and analyze it. And it's just, it's kind of creepy. You go by it. And today I hadn't been out there for about 6 or 7 months. Across the road is the biggest Amazon warehouse, the biggest warehouse I've ever seen anywhere. And then north of the freeway, about a mile north, are all these Amazon servers. And then south of the Amazon warehouse is Google is spending somewhere around $3 to $3.5 billion building a server farm. And I'm telling you, Tony, they've got cooling towers and specialized power plant transformers. And I'm just telling you, in 6 months, the progress that they've made is unbelievable. And then just to the east of the Facebook place, Intel is spending $20 billion in the first phase, $20 billion building the largest chip plant on planet Earth, computer chip. And their plan is to eventually spend $100 billion in construction costs. So we're sort of like the mind of the beast right here. And so it's good for employment. It's good for real estate values, but it's kind of creepy because we know what these people are doing. And so there's the logistics part of this is kind of coming together almost what seems like right under my nose. Now, I know Facebook and Google and those other companies, they all have these big server farms elsewhere. I know there's some down in Atlanta, Dallas, other places. But this is kind of centralized all in one place. And can I just let me make a reference to something, because I think this is part of the convergence that we see. So I saw an interview with Whitney Webb. She has about a 900-page book out about how all of these people kind of fit together. And one of the people she talked about in her book was Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein has a connection, and it's not too far from where all this data center is going in. And that is a guy named Les Wexner. He's a local businessman. He owned a company, started a women's store back in the 60s, borrowed $10,000 from his mother to do it, became a multi-billionaire. And the companies have expanded, but it's the limited. I don't know if they still own Abercrombie and Fitch, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works. They have those under a thing called Intimate Brands. And so those things are all over out there. They're warehouses, they're headquarters, and it's all in the same area. And then Wexner has his own personal estate there, where he built the Word I Have back in the 80s when he was a bachelor. He spent about $50 million building a 67,000 square foot main house. Then he got married in the 90s to a lawyer, she was about 32, I think, from a big firm in New York. And they have 4 children now. But then for a while, there was his former business partner has a house that's just north of the main the Wexner monstrosity of an estate. And Wexner's wife has referred to that as the cottage. And it was originally Wexner's business partner, but then it eventually ended up being owned for a while by a guy named Jeffrey Epstein. And he lived there. And Les Wexner's wife, Abigail, she referred to that as the cottage. But what's interesting is, so I was listening to Whitney Webb. She was talking about this, and I'm aware of all these connections, and you live around Columbus, you know all about this. But what was interesting was I had played a clip in one of my updates from a talk that the infamous Klaus Schwab gave at Harvard Business School back in, 2017, 2018, or 2019, where he was talking about how the World Economic Forum's Leadership Training Institute was training world leaders. Macron, I mean, you can go look up the list on the internet. And in that talk, Schwab, and this is right after the trucker protest in Ottawa, Canada, where they essentially deplatformed and demonetized everybody who contributed to the trucker protest. And he said, half of the cabinet of the government of Canada, Trudeau, Christina Freeland, who's the deputy prime minister and minister of finance, who's also ethnically Ukrainian, which is kind of an interesting thing. He goes, I go to Canada, and half of the government ministers have gone through the World Economic Forum school. And we know that Macron went through it. I even think Putin went through it at one time. A bunch of people in the United States have done it. But it's interesting that the connection to Columbus now and the data and all this other stuff is that the forum was a section of the Harvard Business School called the Center for Public Leadership, which it turns out was started and funded, at least initially, by Les Wexner, who was working at the time with Jeffrey Epstein on his finances. And so Wexner used to own the largest private residence in Manhattan. He later sold that to Epstein for, I hear, $1. And Wexner has at one time had the largest private estate in Aspen, Colorado. They've got a home down in Palm Beach. So he's big into real estate, and he's resigned from his companies because of his association with Wexner or with Epstein. But it's just kind of interesting so here is Schwab speaking at the Harvard Business School, talking about how his World Economic Forum is training all these leaders around the world to do these things. And one of the things that people have noticed is that when this health issue rose in the world a couple of years ago, everybody was kind of surprised because, with very few exceptions, every country did the exact same thing. It was like they were all reading from a script. And so now, where Schwab is bragging about this.
Sorry, John, just interrupting for a second. I'm just wondering if we should turn our cameras off. This is a little bit kind of audio glitchy. I don't know whether it's our bandwidth. So let's just try turning the cameras off and see if it makes a difference.
So anyway, so here's this World Economic Forum thing being bragged about, the Leadership Institute, at a Wexner-funded organization with David Gergen at Harvard. So anyway, so we have this World Economic Forum being bragged about, their Leadership Institute, at a thing funded by Wexner, who at the time when he started this had a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He was essentially managing the Wexner funds, and Wexner claims now that Epstein stole over $100 million from him. I don't know that makes a huge, big difference to somebody like Wexner. I don't think he's worth as much as he used to be, but he's still a multi-billionaire. I mean, he operates on a level that we're not like. But so you have the World Economic Forum, and they push these things. And then you have these other big conferences that push things like the World Government Summit and the Saudi Financial Investment Initiative Institute. And then there's Putin runs a St. Petersburg Economic Forum each year. And so you see all these people, and you see all the same people going to these meetings, and they're all talking about the same thing. And so what you're kind of seeing is this convergence of where they're going. So let me just sort of piece it together a little bit. So in last year at COP26, that's the climate change, UN climate change meeting in Glasgow, Scotland, you had Prince Charles get up who's going to be, well, he's now king, and he will be officially early May, he's going to be coronated, who got up and made this kind of weird speech about we need to have a military style campaign run by people, so, by someone who has more wealth than the countries of the world combined, and trillions at his disposal. And I've played the clip 1,000 times, and he clearly says trillions at his disposal. Now they say, well, he meant at its disposal. But what's interesting is around the time, around the time that Charles gave this speech at COP27, he issued this document that I had not seen until last week. Somebody brought it to my attention, and it's called Terra Carta. Now, we know that the Magna Carta is a big, important document in English history. I went to see one of the copies they have at the British Library in London when I was there a few years ago. But this Terra Carta is sort of the green version of the Magna Carta that was, back hundreds and 800 years ago, whenever that was, that they entered in. And so it's kind of interesting that Prince Charles, who some people think is this guy that we're looking for, there's been a book about it, and they make a good case. And so I always have kept him on a short list. But listen to what he says in this. If we consider the legacy of our generation more than 800 years ago, Magna Carta inspired a belief in the fundamental rights and liberties of people. As we strive to imagine the next 800 years of human progress, the fundamental rights and value of nature with a capital N must represent a step change in our future of industry and future of economy approach. With this in mind, nature, all caps, or nature capitalized, of which we are an integral part, lies at the heart of the Terra Carta. So in other words, here is King Charles, who's just come on the scene. He makes this rather bizarre statement last year, and he issues this thing called the Terra Carta. And he's he's come up with an organization, I think it's called Sustainable Markets Initiative. And it's essentially, I think it's almost like one of these carbon credit exchanges that are popping up. So now we go forward to, around the time that he issued the Terra Carta, by the way, the head, and I can't remember his name, of the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, which a lot of people refer to as the central bank of the central banks, made this speech. And at the speech, he said, we want to essentially issue central bank digital currencies because we want to control everything. So now we go to fast forward to, and so you have people at Davos earlier this year, the guy from Alibaba who said, we're going to, essentially we're going to do this. You had a lady named Pippa Malmgren who spoke at a forum called Are We Ready for a New World Order? And she talked about carbon credits, green energy, central bank digital currencies. And she also said, but we need to have a digital bill of rights for everybody, that there'll be, so we can protect the rights of anybody. So as I've watched this develop over the past year since Charles said that, and we've had this digital thing on the health side, it's just like it's all being woven together, and it's coming very, very quickly. So back in the spring, I think it was in May, the United States government came out with a technology task force. And they've hired for that somebody who was in the health business. And then shortly after that, they came out with the things that we're going to do a pilot to look at central bank digital currencies. So then last week they had this COP27 meeting in Sharm el Sheikh, And again, they were pushing this. Now they're talking about paying the rich countries of the world, paying reparations to the poor countries, and everybody's signing on it. Like in the midst of a financial crisis, everybody's going to be making payments of who knows where they're getting the money from to these other countries. But then right at the time that this happened, the Federal Reserve comes out and says, hey, we have a pilot program of 12 major banks in the United States for our central bank digital currency. So you put in what the Bank of International Settlements guy said, what the guy from Alibaba said, J. Michael Evans, at the Davos meeting back in March or May. And these central bank digital currencies are going to be programmable. And they admit, when you start looking through their documentation, that without a digital bill of rights, by the way, Pippa Malmgren was right. We need a digital bill of rights on this stuff. But as I've watched this over the last year, as I know you have, I haven't seen anything on a digital bill of rights. Have you seen it?
No, it's all about taking away rights. I tell you what, John, let's make this the end of the YouTube section because, so we can get into some real nitty-gritty stuff. So if you're watching this on YouTube, folks, please go to aminutemidnight.com to watch the full version, or else we'll also post it on Rumble and BitChute, and there'll be a full audio version on our Apple Podcasts channel as well. So make sure you don't miss the last part of the video. So that's it for the YouTube section, and we will continue now